This is Camp Hacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Your mission is campers. Whereabouts' mission is making their experience coordinated and connected. Whereabouts is the only camper management system that keeps parents, admin, and staff in sync in real time, so every camper's day runs with confidence, clarity, and care. Check them out today at whereaboutsapp.io. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Intentionally Intentional Leaders. My name is Matt Wilfrid, my pronouns are he, him, and I am thrilled to dive into another edition of our interview series here on the Go Camp Pro podcast network. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, this is an in-depth, maybe a little bit existential game show where we use the randomness of a 20-sided dice to explore the memories, insights, and beliefs that shape the amazing leaders in the summer camp world. We created this format to get beyond the budget lines and program schedules and really understand the people behind the title and the people that are doing great things in the industry. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce a guest who embodies our show's philosophy completely. Howie Grossinger is a titan and a true legend in the summer camp and sports communities. For over 3 decades, he has served as the co-owner and director of Camp Robin Hood, the co-owner of Camp Walden and Camp Madawaska, North America's oldest volleyball camp, and his leadership extends far beyond his own camps. He's a past president and honorary life member of the Ontario Camps Association, a member of the Canadian Camps Association Insurance Committee, co-host of the Camp Owners podcast, and a speaker at camp conferences across North America. And Howie is not just a camp guy. Outside of his camp life, Howie continues his passion for youth sports as a former award-winning high-performance volleyball coach and current president and board chair of the Ontario Volleyball Association. He's a true community builder whose impact is felt across generations. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Howie for about 10 years now in and around the camp space in Ontario, and I can tell you that you will not find a more warm, welcoming, and encouraging person to have on your team. I am consistently impressed by Howie's commitment to both staying current in the emerging needs of the industry and for what their staff team needs at Robin Hood, as well as supporting the next generation of camping professionals. Howie, it is an honor and a privilege to welcome you to Intentionally Intentional Leaders. How are you today?
I'm great, Matt. Thank you for all of that. And, slightly embarrassed and overwhelmed by that list of things, but thank you. It's been a real privilege to get involved in all of those things over the years. So I appreciate you very much. And thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Howie, this is how the game works. So for each round, you have set up a little 20-sided dice there. I'm not sure if you had one on hand, but you've got a virtual one if needed. So the number that comes up on the dice will select your question for that turn. So it's a random question that we're going to ask you. And we'll move through 3 rounds: memories, insights, and beliefs. And just don't forget that you have 2 special powers for the entire game. You have a skip and a flip. So for your skip, if the question isn't hidden right, feel free to use your skip. We'll toss it out, roll again, and do a new question. And for the flip, once per game, you call flip, and then I'll have to answer the question first before you have to answer it. You'll still have to answer it, though, so make sure you're ready for that.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's get into it. So Howie, please give that dice a roll.
Okay. 7.
7. What was the first moment of your life when you could have chosen a different path for yourself?
Wow, great question. I think that the first moment for me was early in my post-secondary school, post-high school career. I think that I knew that growing up in athletics and being supported by my parents to play initially high-level soccer and then go on to play high-level volleyball, that being in a physical and health education program was something that I wanted to do. I think it just married very well with my interests in health and science and sport. But I kind of felt that would be actually a jumping off point to something more professionally into kind of the health profession. I didn't really see myself at the time being in sort of the kind of youth education, youth space, mentoring stuff. And I think that I went into my girlfriend, now wife at the time, Sari, was going into the health profession, and I thought I would kind of do that. So I thought I would be a dentist, if I'm being honest. Like, I think dental, I don't know why, but I saw that as a kind of a path. But it wasn't until the combination of my involvement at Camp Robin Hood as a 19, 20-year-old, and seeing the impact my girlfriend's family was having on people in general, and my love of and my increased comfort in being kind of a front-facing teacher, mentor, things like that just kind of got into my blood, that I kind of, in year 3 of my physical and health education degree, and back in the 80s, most physical and health education students went into teaching. And I didn't necessarily wanted to follow the herd initially, but I think it was camp, and it was the influence of my father-in-law at the time, who had a pathway into education, and just seeing so many teachers around me, that I said, I think there's something here. And camp got in my blood, where I could marry a teaching profession and go into camp for the rest of my life potentially. So I think that was kind of when I kind of felt I was making some moves, and what I thought I would do, and then what I have eventually done in my life.
That's fascinating. The only way that I could picture you as a dentist, Howie, is, for those of you listening, need to go check out Camp Robin Hood's socials, because there is like many times per summer, you'll see Howie dressed up in some costume, and I could see you dressed as a dentist for a theme day at Camp Robin Hood.
Yeah.
But if I saw you in my dentist chair, I think I would fall out of it. I would be shocked.
Yeah.
But
That's absolutely, upon reflection, that's exactly where my head was at when I was 19 years old, graduating high school in the mid 80s.
Wow. Well, I hope there are generations to come of people who feel that spark of camp magic pull them in the camp direction, like you. That's great.
Same. I totally see it too.
Okay.
I see it too. Like, one of the selling features, I think, of any camp experience is, encouraging people to give it a chance, because you never know where it's going to lead. Often I have young people who will interview with me and say, I didn't go to camp, but my friends did, and they speak so highly of it, but I'm getting a lot of pushback from my parents because they want me to make more money or do this. And I just say, give it a chance. Like, do you want me to talk to your parents? I'm like, because I think as camp professionals, we have lots of examples of a lot of young people who had their sights set on something, and then that camp influence turned them around to do something else. And I'm kind of, in retelling this story, I'm kind of a bit of an embodiment of that myself. So I'm happy to tell my story when I'm prompted or given an opportunity to, for sure.
Okay, thank you, Howie. So let's get right on to it. Question 2.
All right, I'm rolling. 18.
18. It's very funny, Howie. Your daughter rolled this same question. So the dice are telling a story. Who is someone who played an important role in your life, but you haven't been able to communicate with them in years?
Really great question. I'm sure every guest leads with that. I think that if I was to really dig deep, I think my very first volleyball coach, as I look back, I haven't spoken to him in years. He's still with us. I stay connected through some very dear friends who we kind of reminisce occasionally, but Mr. Cal at my junior high in North York, Ontario, Pleasant View Junior High, kind of is a great example for me of how one's passion can just have this cascading effect on people, right? He had a passion for the sport of volleyball, and through that medium was able to influence a generation of people who were able to create incredible moments and set the foundation for lifelong relationships. And so much influence that it kind of mirrors what I think we do at camp, and how we, people who bring people together through their passion and the respect that they garner, lead people down a certain path. And for me personally, some of my most meaningful relationships have been through the sport. And, I feel very blessed that through my development in the sport as an athlete, parent, coach, and now in my role as, I guess, a volunteer administrator and, thought leader in the sport, married with my camp stuff, like Cal was at, the beginning of that influence. And what was I, 14 at the time, in junior high? But I feel like it's someone who, if I got the opportunity to connect with him, and, these days, I think this question really prompts for me someone I would want to credit with having me see the power of that influence, the power of passion, the power of community building, the power of kind of character building that goes beyond whatever it is that you're rallying around.
And it's infectious. That passion is like, you can't help but be co-passionate when you're hanging out with someone like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest, going back to the camp staff and the power of the camp experience, that I think it's the greatest gift you can give to kids, is to show them different areas that they can be passionate about. And that's like, you can be the most new to camp person ever, but if you're passionate about something and you can share that with kids, then you're setting yourself up to be a person who's going to be named in an answer to a question like this by someone several years down the road.
Decades.
It's profound that your person you chose impacted you when you were 14 like that. It's amazing.
Yeah. I just feel that set me on my way. And I have periodically, reminisced about that with Sari, my wife, and we talk about markers. A few years ago, I had like the 40th reunion of the very first volleyball team that Cal put together. And
wow.
And there were 8 of us there, right? And we all still live, we all made a point of saying we need to get together. And there are so many camp examples and sports examples of those things. And I think that was my first kind of experience with someone who had that kind of positive impact on my life.
Well, thanks for sharing. I hope that you get to tell Cal that, or maybe we'll send him this recording.
Yes, we should send him this recording, and I know the people who can get it to him for sure.
Amazing. Okay. Okay, one more question in memories. And now, it always comes back to camp eventually, but here's a little bit more of an explicit camp memory question for you.
2.
Tell me about the first time you were responsible for other people's children. What did you get right? And maybe what did you miss?
Okay. My very first summer at Camp Robin Hood, I had been dating Sari for 2 years, and I finally got kind of the nerve to say, okay, maybe this is something I want to be part of, and call it the nerve of asking, Sari's dad, my mentor, Larry Bell, for a job, and what pressure that would come with that. And he gave me the responsibility of, at the time, in the mid to late 80s, of actually being a one-on-one staff to what then was kind of unheard of, and that is supporting a camper with ADHD. And he felt that, I would be someone who could, support that camper and the behaviors and the personality of a camper like that. And I really, for the very first time, being, 20 years old at the time, and the world of inclusion and all the things that now are such part and parcel of how we deliver camp and support campers of all abilities and needs. It was kind of like very early where Larry, to his credit, I feel like is a pioneer in so many ways of including and integrating kids, and felt that camp could have such a positive impact. And he bestowed that responsibility on me, which in a very Larry Bell style would never say, listen, you got to make this good for the family. Like, they're taking a chance that we're like, he would not never put that pressure on me. But I think knowing him and knowing the responsibility of camp at the time, personally, I wanted to impress because it was my first camp job here, right? But secondly, I really got a sense that, I needed to get this as right as possible, even though I wasn't a trained professional. I feel I had he felt I had a personality and a commitment to organization and teamwork and, the kind of attention that a camper like this would need. And it created incredibly successful moments, some incredibly embarrassing moments where the camper himself couldn't control his behavior that brought attention to me in some memorable ways that some of my friends from back then speak of still, which is kind of funny. But I just felt, I do feel for the first time, that was an experience where, there was a commitment to the family sending their camper to kid who had this additional needs that we needed to work hard to live up to I wouldn't say promises, but at least the commitments we made to make this really positive. And I felt that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't think I was super amazing at it, but I do think that I felt not pressure, but I felt an obligation and a responsibility for the first time that, hey, how this kid had this experience would impact how their parents feel about sharing him with us and the growth that he would have. And yeah, I think that's one of the first times I ever really felt that.
Yeah, and just understanding it's pressure, but it is like an incredible amount of like ownership and
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
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 I'm curious how, if you could go back to your past self, if you could like transport and like get in the ear of young Howie Grossinger stepping into that, like right before that kid got off the bus, what piece of advice would you have given your past self, or would you give your past self?
I think what I've learned is it's kind of like working with kids. It's like give and take. Like I think that I came in with kind of almost this rigid, like this, it's like how to marry like the training you got versus meeting the camper or the staff member at where they're at. I think I would probably tell my younger self, like, take a little bit of the pressure on. You can still roll with it and still give them a good experience if you're taking the ownership piece seriously, right? If you're
Yeah.
committed to it. But I think some of the best camp people I've known over my years, they do put an immense amount of pressure on themselves for sure. But I think I'd go back and say, you can give yourself a little bit of grace if you don't get it perfect.
But that would be a gift for any first year staff
Yeah.
to,
And
yeah, to
it,
hear.
yeah, and it's something that, I think at this time, at this place in my career, I love playing that role of, just
Mhm.
given the great team that we have, that we can really dig into some of those messages I think we're dealing with a cohort, an era of staff that probably feel being perfect is pressure filled as ever before. And I think
Right.
and I think that creating environments like we do, where, you know, what we do is about as real as it gets, but also, you want to have your teams sending this incredible and very real message of support and a real sense of support, so your staff can feel like I'm in a place that's, with me every step of the way.
I know you folks are very intentional at Robinhood. And speaking of Robinhood, we'll take a quick pause from the game because I understand Robinhood has a big milestone coming up. You're celebrating 80 years,
Yeah.
which in the day camp world is incredible. Tell me a little bit more about that and what you folks are doing to mark this huge occasion.
Well, we're super excited. While Camp Robin Hood is celebrating 80 years, our family, Pearl and Larry Bell, my in-laws, Sari's parents, celebrating or just celebrated 65 years at camp, and they still come to camp 3 days a week. And as many people know about our family, we're into our third generation, and it's incredibly special and satisfying. And also, I think we're so proud that we've kind of found our place in a world where many overnight camps feel, where there's this generational connection and
Yep.
generational association with our camp in the day camp space that's been created largely because of the era that Larry and Pearl began, that Sari and I have been privileged to continue with, and that I know Jordana is equally motivated to continue. So we have two events coming up. One is more of a staff rec, staff social kind of event on an evening. We call it, the ultimate Friday night schmooze fest, where we can bring generations and decades of staff to have some silly fun and play the music of generational summers at camp.
Nice.
And we look forward to having a large number of people attend. And that's sometime in February. And then later in the summer, We're organizing a kind of a family return to camp, generations of family returning to the site, seeing the changes. There's nothing more special, and I know this goes for a lot of camp people, where a grandparent can talk to their grandchild and say, this is the same dock that I stood on when I was a camper or a staff member here. And we have those same moments here at Robin Hood, which is great. And so we wanted to create a space sometime closer to the summer where we can have people back on the site. So 2 events, and then a summer filled with silly, amazing, memorable things for all the campers and staff who are going to join us in this very special summer. So really proud of this, and really excited for, the calendar to flip over so we can get this going.
That's amazing. And if folks maybe want to like tune in to the great things that are happening and the ways that you're celebrating it, to learn from it and just kind of see that magic, is social media, the Camp Robin Hood social, is the best place?
Totally Camp Robin Hood social. Obviously, reaching out to me personally to get on our mailing list would be wonderful. And we can send out a lot of information. So Howie at camprobinhood.ca. But Camp Robin Hood social is probably your best place to get that information for sure.
That's great. Yeah, we'll pop the links in the show notes to
Amazing.
this
Yeah,
episode.
for sure.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, Howie. Are you ready to get back to the game?
Let's get back to the game.
Okay, so we're moving on to our insights round now. So please go ahead and roll your dice.
13.
13. What is your best defense against despair?
My best defense against despair. Wow. I've been very, very lucky because, the word despair is on a massive continuum, and my life has been very blessed with a lot of things. But using, in the spirit of the word despair, I've kind of always kind of leaned on my own efforts to compare any given moment that I feel that is a challenge or I'm feeling a little lost, to trying to dig into moments that may be similar, and who are the people that I've leaned on to help me with that, or what I did tangibly to help me through that. So, I think about, COVID and us as an industry going through COVID. I would label that there were moments of despair very early on, especially around the unknown as it relates to the industry. But even, whether it be my personal or professional life, I'm really blessed to have a network of family and friends that, I can lean on and get vulnerable with and help me through that. But I've always tried to lean into, how does this moment match up to something I've already gone through? COVID was very unique. So I find myself these days, if I have to compare what I did, I go back to that. But I've been blessed. There haven't been too many moments of that. But at the same time, I do that. And I think that when I also relate this question to moments where staff are feeling super down and ineffectual, or I coached athletes who felt that this loss or this moment, and I was privileged to coach volleyball at a high level. It's about examining how does this moment match up to really what is either despair or loss or frustration, and kind of some of what I believe to be some of my strengths happen to be helping others, get out of that. And so I try to employ what I tell others to myself, which is not always so easy, but that's kind of where my mind goes to in answering a question like that.
That kind of resiliency, I think it's a hard lesson to learn, certainly, but it's one that has been true that I've seen. I mean, from the industry perspective, through COVID, through, challenges that I've seen people go through, is that, resiliency is a thing. And sometimes it takes, like you said, it takes some special people to help us get there, but we're often more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
100%. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good one.
Wonderful. Okay.
I'm rolling.
Go ahead and roll. Insights number 2.
Number 7.
Number 7. If you got a do-over for one decision in your life, what would it be? Don't forget you've got your skip
I'm going
and
to
your
flip
flip.
this. I'm going to flip this.
Okay. I have been so lucky to be given a ton of opportunities in my career throughout the camp world. And I've been really lucky that people have had faith in me to take on things that are challenging and to try new things and go into different areas of the world and the camp adjacent space. The time that I found myself most disappointed in the long run was a time that I chased a financial decision. And which is funny because growing up going to camp, it was never a financial decision to go to camp, right? You did it because it was meaningful and it meant so much. But looking back on it, there was an opportunity presented to me and I said, I was worried about it. There were a couple of flags, but the dollar amount seemed really good for a time in my life that I was in, and it was going to help with a specific project. And I didn't remind myself to think long term and think about valuing things like stability, things like balance. Whereas I am pretty comfortable jumping into the unknown, but this is one time where I think I should have taken an extra second and prioritized stability in that moment. I think down the road, it led to, that whole resiliency piece. We bounce back, we move, we pivot, we find a way out of a tough situation, but it would have been better for it had not to been a tough situation in the first place. So I think finding that true north for yourself and for your family and for those decisions and trying to stick to that, even when an opportunity seems like it will be helpful in the short term.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think that in our professional lives as camp pros too, we probably have examples of people who've come into our lives who may have made a decision similar to that. And then they have an opportunity to like course correct too, right? Like it can be temporary and come back. How many examples do camp professionals have, directors have, who, let's call them a high level, staff person, went to another program because they did what exactly the circumstance you described, and then, said, or came back and were supportive every way through. And sometimes you have to do those things to know or to learn, right? And sometimes the light bulb goes off at weird stages. And I think it just teaches you that, there are opportunities that we can learn from, and it's just about a collection of experiences that just form who we are too, right? That make us who we are, and reflect on it. So I see that a lot with people. I have some really good conversations with some people who have moved on from camp who talk about the impact of a decision or not a decision and stuff like that. Those are, the do-over stuff is really great. I guess my funny do-over, if I'm being honest, I had a funny do-over, just business decisions in the camp world. Like I always remember when we bought Camp Walden, like we went kind of crazy with the clothing program for Camp Walden when we first bought it. And we all look at each other and said, yeah, that wasn't a good one right out of the gate, kind of thing. So, when it came to merch and swag and stuff like that, it's the one that I think that Sari, Jen, Saul, and I always joke about, let that be the worst thing you want to have a do-over about, kind of thing.
Yeah, not too. Was it a design or a quantity issue?
Totally a quantity issue. It was like we were trying to get rid of some stuff like 8 years into. And I wouldn't even be surprised if that in our storage bin up at camp, there's still items from 21 years ago.
Yeah, fair enough. And there's only so many like free giveaways before even people are like, I have 3 of these already.
I know.
One of them is a dish towel now.
Yeah. Oh, they love camp so much. Of course, we're going to sell 3,000 of these things, or some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
Very good. Would you like me to roll?
Yes, please. This will be our camp insight question, although they're all camp eventually.
Yeah. 20. All right. 20.
In Dungeons and Dragons, this would be a nat 20. So something really good happens. So I think there's going to be some good vibes here.
Okay.
It's a bit of a bigger question. So strap in. Where currently are you choosing progress over perfection to preserve safety, staff well-being, or mission this season? Where are you choosing progress over perfection?
I I think that, first of all, that's an amazing, amazing question. I think that we have a tendency, in I would say in particular high level staffing decisions, we can sometimes get somewhat bogged down in fitting the perfect person into the perfect situation. And I have found over some years now that it's not about, the perfect square into the like it's not that. It's not fitting the perfect puzzle piece,
Right.
because the progress or the upside of taking, in this case, a person who has perhaps dedicated themselves to your camp, who have demonstrated a certain amount of leadership that you feel is moldable, develop, you have the opportunity to develop, and then you have this role that demands such a certain level, like what is innate in them going in that role and what is coachable and teachable and
Right.
moldable. And there are moments where I think that, and I can only speak from my own experience with my own teams, is that, sometimes, and we have to go through the exercise of trying to find the perfect fit, but in the attempt to
Mhm.
find the perfect fit, I think sometimes we more often get disappointed ultimately, in rather taking a chance on people, or being respectful and honor their time at camp. And by
Mhm.
no means there has to be a certain level of skill and dedication, and all those things are a given, but
Mhm.
having to weigh, trying to achieve that perfection in fitting the role versus the upside of what could come of someone who has maybe a little bit of a, call it a deficiency in one area, but how you can work that into making it even better on the other side. Like I think that's where I'm thinking right now when you ask that question, because I think we can, we need someone who does this, this, and this, and this to make camp run perfectly.
Right. Right.
And I think that for some things we do at camp, I've always learned and been mentored that we lean on the person and their ability to adapt and develop and be coachable and
Right.
culturally fit into what you're doing. Because if they speak your language and their heart's in the right direction, you can do a lot of great things with someone who may be deficient in one aspect of that perfect role.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think about camp as this space where you get to do things for the first time just by nature of it. There's the any job at camp is so dynamic and so wide ranging that you can't fit it into a perfect schedule or a perfect job description. There's going to be nuance in it anyway. So why not embrace those moments of nuance and let that person either struggle or find a different
Mm.
way to do it, because that's where sometimes we have that dreaded phrase, the quote, "the way we've always done it." But if a
Totally.
person doesn't know that, then they could take it in a direction that's actually beneficial or help you look at something from a new perspective. And the older that we get as directors and professionals, we're bringing in a newer generation of staff that is competent in so many different areas than we are or we were, that I think it trying to put a, like, the quote, "square peg in a round hole," that metaphor just doesn't apply anymore, I don't think.
I agree. And I think that at the end of the day, we just have to see ourselves in the leadership of our camps as the ultimate safety net, right? We
Mhm.
have to just,
Mhm.
if you can create a culture where, you're seen as the person isn't, I don't want to be the camp director that scares my staff on making the big mistake, right? Like,
Right.
like that's not my style. It's never been. I think that our culture here at the camps that I'm affiliated with and associated with, I think we've always, leaned on David Yeager, right? High expectations, high support. Like that's been kind of our mantra. and we try to live it every day in the various forms with the 3-year counselor who's now getting a chance to be a staff supervisor, and all the roller coaster ride that person's going to go in. We've got people built into our system who are emulating what we espouse, what we're modeling, and just the way we behave. And I think there's this massive trickle down effect when you can do that. Be the safety net. And I really think that good things do happen. They may not happen as fast as you'd like them, but I think we get there, especially if you're committed to that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Again, it goes back to thinking long rather than just immediate. And
Always.
that's huge.
Always.
This Go Camp Pro podcast is brought to you by Whereabouts, a new product from our friends at Camptivities. Ever had that heart-stopping moment when a camper accidentally goes home on the bus, but their guardian was supposed to pick them up? Or when you can't confirm everyone's arrived at camp until noon, even though the morning meeting ended hours ago? What about those little moments that slip through the cracks, like staff not knowing it's a camper's birthday or missing a special event reminder? You're not alone. Camps everywhere are saying the same thing. They need a less manual, more connected way to manage the camper experience from drop-off to pickup. Introducing Whereabouts, the only camper management system that updates in real time across 3 interfaces: parents, admin, and staff. The parent app is attendance forward and includes all the features families expect: facial recognition photos, event calendars, news feeds, and more, giving parents peace of mind and your team fewer calls to handle. One system, one set of data, everyone in sync, all the time. From knowing where every camper is, to reducing office chaos, to helping staff feel more connected, Whereabouts help your camp run smarter, not harder. Book a demo today at whereaboutsapp.io. Okay,
Nice.
Howie, we're ready to move on to beliefs. So we're going deep here with these last 3 questions.
Okay, here we go. Number 6.
Number 6. Does the idea, we're going real deep.
Oh,
Does the
gosh.
idea of an infinite universe excite or scare you?
Can we just skip that one? Like,
Sure.
I'm not, that's not, it's not in my, it's not in my wheelhouse, people.
I think honestly, I feel the same way. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care if there's infinite or finite or whatever. I'm just here to have a good time.
I'm rolling in the moment with, there's lots going on. I'm here.
Yeah. Okay. Let's skip it. Let's roll again. For
Okay.
me,
Now
please.
I'm bound by the next one, but here we go. The next 2. Here we go. But that's good. I'll lean into that. 16.
16.
Oh God.
Out of the frying pan into the fire. So, Howie, how often do you think about death?
I really don't, if I'm being honest. I think, I am incredibly blessed to have my parents and my in-laws still at my age. And, and I try to avoid thinking of a time when our lives as a family will be different, when that chapter, that flips the page to that kind of chapter. But in terms of my own either preoccupation or thinking about it, maybe I think about it a little more, just the nervousness of my annual doctor's visit, but and what the results are of that. But I don't really honestly think about that. I think that for me, it's really trying to live in the now and trying to hope that whenever that time comes that, I've set the people that I love most up in the best possible way to carry on and be the great people that they have been while I got to spend time with them.
The phrase that's coming to mind for you right now is once, now, and forever a coach for people.
Yeah. But not a lot of super. There are moments, of course, but not a lot of preoccupation for sure.
Okay, let's see if we can match the intensity of that one.
That was a good one. Oh my gosh. 14.
14. What belief helps you make sense of the world?
I think for me, just this idea that that people will do good by others. There's I think this work that I've been blessed to do has been, grounded in trying to give others experiences that, help them become who they are, and things of that. So I think there's this belief that people will just naturally do good by each other. I mean, listen, we're living in a world where that's not always so evident, of course.
Yep.
And there are a lot of examples of that in current day events around the world, and those that have been, affecting, my community, as in recent time. But I'd like to think that I've kind of leaned into this belief that when push comes to shove, people will do the right thing and do good things. And I kind of lean on that as well. And I think that when they're part of families and cultures and communities that espouse that and lean on that and lead with that about, doing well and doing the right thing, I really kind of remain optimism. There's a, back to your previous question, if we're going to get kind of honest with each other, it's less about thinking about death and more thinking about when I'm blessed in being a grandfather one day, whenever that happens, will my grandchildren live in a world where, they can, really, benefit from the goodness of others and feel safe and those types of things. And I think it just stems from a belief that, the optimism that people will do good by others.
I appreciate that generational perspective, and no pressure to your kids who may or may not listen to
Yeah,
this
no pressure
episode.
at all, but yeah, and it'll whenever that, happens, but the
Yeah,
point is that, I start to think about that more than anything else, just with the way the
sure.
world is spinning these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Howie. Okay. Last question.
Okay.
We're in beliefs, and this is a campy one. Please go ahead and roll.
Back at 14.
14. Okay. Do you believe that belonging can be engineered through design or only cultivated through relationships? I'll give it to you again.
Yeah.
Do you believe that belonging can be engineered through design or is only cultivated through relationships?
No, I don't think that it's only cultivated by relationships. I think that we as camps really this concept of intentionality, I think it starts with relationships. Like, it's the way you welcome people, and it's the way you embrace them and respond to them, all that stuff. But the belonging part is often like, no one feels that they belong right away, but they can feel right away that you are genuinely and authentically want to get to know them and care for them. Like, those things
Yeah.
happen. The belonging takes place when, Howie, who is maybe the first person that a new applicant at Robinhood may see on a Zoom call, is everything that Howie's saying on that Zoom call to onboard them and get them excited. Like, the best compliment that I could ever get at this stage in my career is when a staff member, 16 or 17 or 18-year-old, will say, everything you told me on that January Zoom call, that was my experience.
Mm.
And so for me, it's like that. And then everything we do afterwards, I'll give you a great example. And I've shared this with friends like Andy Pritikin, and Travis is largely responsible for introducing me to the platform of Bonjoro. Right. Right. And
Yep.
for the last few winters, Novembers, we have a fairly large staff, like, many of us do, but I have to make close to 300 personal videos on Bonjoro that I send to every staff member. I feel that the relationship with Howie has been established already, even if it's just for one summer, 2 months. Where
Right.
belonging comes into place are those things that you do that
Yeah.
really emphasize that you're part of this community. And so that platform, as much as, you know, it takes me a hell of a long time to do those things.
Yeah.
I keep my eye on the prize constantly to try to be as genuine and authentic and true to myself in looking at Matt and saying, Matt, we really appreciated everything you did last year. I hope you're thinking about coming back. I'd love the opportunity to chat more about that with you in the coming months. You know, like I feel that expression is where the belonging comes in. But lean into relationships first, be authentic, you know, and all that stuff. And then, and it doesn't have to come from you as the leader of the organization. It comes from just how your philosophy filters down the daily activities. You know, for us as a day camp, it's, you know, for a family, I don't have a relationship with every camper family that comes to Camp Robin Hood, but boy, do our systems of arrival and dismissal and our bus program give you a sense that you belong. At least we hope it does. And
Right.
I lean into the fact that our family's been doing this for a long time, so I'd like to think we were getting something right. But you know, the point is that I think that those are the things that kind of accentuate the belonging part. And whatever slogans you put on your website and whatever you say about yourself, it means nothing unless those kids and those families on the ground feel it every single time with as many of those interactions they can have to have them walk away.
I think that's perfect. I think what I'm taking away is that the design of how you, if one of your intentions is to help people make the choice that they belong at a place. You can't force someone to belong. They make that choice, right? But it makes it easier for them to make that choice when you have systems that have relationships as touch points throughout there, whether it's the personal video, whether it's the way you get down on a kid's level and look them in the eye before they get on the bus and say, hey, I'm here to help you have the best week ever. Are you ready to go? Let's do it. All of those little touch points that relationships, it's kind of the thread that weaves through all of the intentionality and the processes you're building.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love, thanks for asking that question. It really makes me reflect on that stuff. That's a good one.
Okay. Well, Howie, I could do this, I think, for hours and hours, but we are at the end of the episode. But before we say goodbye, I have one special request for you. So we end this podcast with a nomination of someone else who you think is a thoughtful, intentional camp leader or director that you would nominate to have this interview happen with. And so tell me who that is and why you think we should chat with them.
Well, some people would, you know, think I would say, like, there are a lot of people really close to me, but I would like to go to someone who I know. I really hope that they participate. You know, obviously you have to approach them, but one of the people that I've looked up to and is a colleague who I think has so much to offer that the world hasn't really heard as much as they should is my very, very dear friend, Mike Pierce from Camp Toowoomba. Incredibly thoughtful leader. You know, just, I think he's a powerhouse in the industry. And I think that he would have a lot of wonderful insight to a discussion like this too. I hope that's something we could do, or you could do.
Yeah. Well, let's send him this episode so he knows what he's getting into first, and then we'll definitely have him on. Thank you for that recommendation, Howie, and thank you just for all that you do for the camp world, for spending this time and going deep and going a little scary, but there's so much that me as a 16-year-old first-year camp staff would benefit just as much as I'm sure that someone else in your tenure of the industry would benefit from hearing from. So thank you.
Well, and I just want to thank you, Matt. I mean, we work together professionally on the podcast network, but you know, your thoughtful pushing of unique and innovative and wonderful ways to get conversation going in the industry is something that's much needed, and I appreciate you very much. So I commend you for some of the bold and wonderful things that I think allow all of us in the industry to benefit from, but also, you know, just to talk about. And so kudos to you.
Yeah. And thank you. I recognize those, and I share those with Travis, who is such a champion of trying new things and
Yeah.
and doing this. So I
Team. You're a
encourage.
great team.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, we are a great team, and because that, definitely recommend people go check out the Camp Owners podcast on the
Please.
Go Camp Pro podcast network. Howie and Kelly are, I think, my two favorite co-hosting pair. No shade to Oliver, my co-host on
Yeah.
First Class Counselors, but Howie and Kelly are the Regis and Kelly, for those of you who get that reference, of the
Well,
camp world, and I love listening to the two of them and the thoughtful and amazing guests they bring on. So you folks should definitely check out the Camp Owners podcast. We'll throw a link in the show notes of this one too.
that would be great. And I know Kelly would say this too. I'm really forever grateful for Travis bringing the two of us together the way that he did 6 years ago. And it has spawned a wonderful friendship between our families, and just it's been great. And just I think it's a really tangible example of the power of camp and the good people that you get to meet along the way. So really grateful for that. So it's been great, and we really love meeting new people and thinking and sharing, and thanks to you guys for having a platform for us to do it.
Thanks for being a part of it. Okay, Howie, take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.